Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to today's live reading of To Catch an Elf by Debra Parmley, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Join me. Chapter 1, Meeting the Elf. Zeke Kingsley and Beverly Westwood were holding hands in upstate New York, strolling past quaint little shops that bored him to death, when he spotted an antique Christmas elf sitting behind a store window staring out at him. The elf wore red and white striped pants with a green vest covered with stars, along with a red belt and a gold buckle, and a red and white striped hat with tiny bells set atop her long blonde hair in braids. Her long legs and arms were bendable for posing. Pointed green shoes with bells finished her outfit. She was unique, unlike any Christmas elf that Zeke had ever seen. People all over the country would post pictures of their elves on the biggest busy elf contest website. All were trying to win a $5,000 prize. Beverly had decided to enter the contest and she wanted to win. That elf is perfect. He almost laughed out loud as he stopped suddenly. When Zeke didn't step forward with her but stopped and tugged her back toward him, Beverly turned with a frown. "I found you the perfect elf for your elf contest," he said, and then pointed to it. Her frown deepened as she looked at the doll. "It's unique," he said. "No one else will have one like it. Let's go in." No, Beverly adamantly shook her head. Antique shops are dreadful, stinky stores full of old things that smell. She crinkled her perfect nose and adjusted her fur coat around her shoulders as if she were suddenly chilled, which made no sense as it was a warm fall evening and would not begin to cool off for another hour. He watched her, thinking. Had to be her reaction to the store or to the elf. Interesting. His high society girlfriend was suddenly showing cracks in her normal facade for the first time since he'd known her. Everyone had a face they presented to the world, and the one they used in the dark when no one else was around. That had been his early discovery as a child. Watching grown-ups and his adult life in college and beyond hadn't shown him anything different. I wonder what caused her extreme dislike of antique shops and the old things they displayed. She likely wouldn't enjoy historical museums either. "Never mind," he said. "If you're cold, we can stop for a cappuccino instead." "That sounds much better," Beverly said, her usual mask back in place. With her perfect nose, porcelain skin, cool blue eyes, and platinum blonde hair in a bob, she could have stepped out of a fashion magazine, and she knew it. That and her family money gave her a haughty air at times. Beverly also loved to show off her double D breasts that her family's old money had bought her. They always caught men's attention, and she loved that attention. She flashed him a smile, one that would have most men catering to her every whim. It never worked on him. The first time she tried it, he'd simply stood there waiting for her, for what most would have considered a very long time, before giving her a wink to let her know that he was on to her and unmoved by her charms. And then he had walked away. That's what made him attractive as hell to her, as he knew it would. He knew a thing or two about inheriting money and had kept his inheritance quiet, refusing to let anyone know how much he had, but implying that he had enough. So he could easily behave as if he did not care about her family money or their influence. Though, in truth, he believed that having more was always better. The more you had, the more you could do the things that you otherwise couldn't. He also had a knack for watching people and learning things about them that they might not even know about themselves. She saw him as strong in mind and in character. She was right. Never would he let another woman control or emasculate him. He'd learned strength growing up with a mother who controlled everything. Growing up without a father, he had no other choice as a child. Just as his mother had shown one face to the world and another to him at home, he too learned to present a mask. The difference was he never let his slip and never lost his temper. He was always in control of himself. Beverly knew nothing of his past. He told her that both of his parents were dead, and she dropped the subject at once, not wanting to hear of unpleasant things. She tried to avoid hearing unpleasant things. It did bring a degree of sympathy into her eyes after that, and if the subject came up, she would steer people away from it, as if she were doing him a kindness. He really didn't care about that. He found watching her amusing. She had no clue how much he watched her. Watching women was something he enjoyed. They went on to have cappuccinos and then on to finish her early Christmas shopping. October seemed early to him, but people did shop that early. He was more of a shop the night before kind of man, and would pick up from whatever was left in the stores to choose from. To him, Christmas was no big deal. Other people didn't celebrate Christmas the way he would have. Santa rarely brought him something he wanted. This Christmas would be different. Later, when Zeke was back at work in Manhattan, he called the antique shop and described the elf. Do you still have the elf? He asked. Yes, we have it, the woman answered. Excellent. I'll purchase the elf if you can send it out to be cleaned and to be filled with new stuffing. But that would decrease the value of the antique, the shop owner protested. True, but then I can gift it to my fiance who has terrible allergies. This is a Christmas gift and I don't want it to make her sick. She will love the gift, but not if it has old stuffing. It must be hypoallergenic stuffing for her all the way. Oh, I see, the woman said, though she was still clearly distressed at the idea of devaluing the antique. He could tell by her tone and by the fact that she had yet to agree to it. The elf is old and comes with a history, he said. She said, her name is Tanana. The girl who owned her died, and her mother took the doll and packed it away in a trunk, where it stayed until everything in the house was sold at an estate sale many years later. We've tried to find others like her, but there seems to be none. She is unique and should be preserved. I'm not going to change what she looks like, just her stuffing. Can it be done? I will pay extra. Throwing more money at something often brought the results you wanted. Yes, it can be done, she said with a sigh, giving in. I know people who restore dolls. Zeke gave her his credit card number and the purchase was made. He would surprise Beverly with the elf just before December and the start of the online elf contest. They'd be spending the Christmas holiday in Miami, Florida, so Beverly would need a dog sitter and a house sitter for her house in the large Bass Lake subdivision of the Pocono Mountains. A house she never went to unless she wanted to ski all weekend, which she only did once a year now that the newness had worn off. Once the newness wore off anything, she was done with it. He knew all about newness wearing off, but he had the perfect house sitter for her, one who had sat for his cousin not long ago, a blonde named Marcie with curves and a sweet smile who also loved dogs. She was perfect. After the elf arrived, he looked the doll over. You could see the recent stitching where they'd cut into the back of the fabric of the doll and then stitch it back together. There was plenty of new stuffing. Good. Taking scissors, he ripped open the stitching, careful not to cut anything that would leave a mark. Then he pulled out just enough stuffing and inserted a camera inside, threading the thin part that would sit behind the eye of the doll up into her face behind the eye. He fiddled with it until everything was in place. Then made sure the stuffing hid everything so you could not feel the equipment. After that, he restitched the doll. It took a while because no one had taught him how to sew, but eventually he got it done. He finished, he looked the doll over. No one will know. He would give Beverly the doll tomorrow night. Beverly still didn't like the elf much, even though the doll now smelled fresh and new and had been cleaned. What is this? She leaned back against his leather couch away from the doll. Why would you buy this old thing for me? I bought her for you so you can win. He spoke as if it should be obvious. This elf is unique. No one else will have one like it. The owner of the shop tried to locate another one like it and had no luck, so this must be the only one in existence. The other contestants will be buying new elves off the shelves. I know how you can't stand to see any woman wearing the same dress as you, so I don't believe you'd want your elf to look like everyone else's. Look, I even had her cleaned and restuffed for you, so there's no bad smell. His tone implied that he had gone to a lot of trouble for her. She appeared confused. Her insides are all new? She asked, though he had just told her that they were. Patient, he nodded. Well, she hesitated, picking up the doll and giving it a quick sniff to double check. He knew it didn't smell bad. Thank you, she finally said. I do want to win the contest. She sat the doll back down on the coffee table and stared at it for a long time. Finally, she spoke. It's looking at me. Most dolls do, he said, and you've been staring at it for a while. Don't make yourself paranoid over a silly doll. Well, I'm not taking this elf to Miami with us, she said. I don't want to have to look at her or have her looking at me every time we come back into her room. You don't have to take the elf to Miami, he said. Let the house sitter take the pictures for the contest and then send them to you. It's not like she'll have anything else to do besides walk the dog once a day. Ginger, Beverly's little King Charles Spaniel, was easy to take care of. This was true. She just needed to be fed, watered, and walked, which was all Beverly did with her. The rest of the time, Ginger was at doggy daycare, but they didn't board dogs overnight. That's a great idea, Beverly said. Didn't you say you knew someone? Yes, he said. My cousin hired a house sitter a few months ago and she was good. I'll call him for her contact number and take care of it. And if you don't want to take the elf home with you tonight, she can stay here until you hand her off to the sitter. He didn't tell her the house sitter's name was Marcie Hayes or that he had had Marcie's number for months. He'd even had Marcie investigated. He knew a lot about Marcie Hayes that his girlfriend didn't need to know. She didn't need to know a lot of things. Luckily, she was too busy being pretty to be more inquisitive. Beverly gave him a beautiful smile and then leaned forward and kissed him. His smile after that kiss was deep, not merely because of the kiss. He was visualizing Marcie with her soft curves, big blue eyes, and long blonde hair. She was pretty enough to be a doll herself, pretty enough to be in pictures with the elf. The elf would keep her company all through December as she took pictures with it for the elf contest, and he would be watching. It was the perfect plan.